The dense forest of Portland, Oregon felt almost suffocating as Ethan trekked deeper into its heart. He was an experienced hiker, but there was something different about this place, something unsettling. The trees towered overhead like ancient sentinels, their gnarled branches creaking as though whispering secrets to each other. The air was thick with the scent of moss and decay, the earthy smell of a place forgotten by time. Ethan had hiked through many forests in his life, but this one felt like it was alive, aware of his every move. He shook off the unease creeping up his spine. He was here for solitude, to escape the chaos of his life in New Orleans, Louisiana. The city had been a constant whirlwind of noise, traffic, and people. After a string of personal losses, Ethan had decided to disappear for a while. A few days in the wilderness was all he needed to reset, to find peace. As the sun began to dip beneath the horizon, Ethan found a small clearing nestled between two towering pines and decided it would serve as his campsite. The forest had begun to darken quickly, but he had everything he needed: a tent, a small campfire, and the promise of silence. He set up his camp with practiced ease, but the silence didn't last long. Around the time the last of the sunlight vanished, a strange noise cut through the stillness. It was subtle at first, a faint twig snapping in the distance, then the unmistakable sound of footsteps crunching on the underbrush. Ethan stood still, straining to hear over the sound of his own heartbeat. He glanced at the fire, which crackled and popped, but the noise stopped, leaving only the whisper of the wind. Ethan pushed the thoughts of intruders from his mind. It was probably an animal, maybe a deer or a fox. He tried to relax, settling into his camp chair as the darkness thickened. But then the footsteps resumed, closer this time, too close to be an animal. He grabbed his flashlight and ventured out of the tent, shining its beam into the shadows. The light cut through the trees like a knife, illuminating only the swirling mists of the forest and the flickering shadows of the branches overhead. His pulse quickened, and his breath came in shallow gasps. His eyes darted back and forth, scanning for anything, any sign of life, but there was nothing. Then came a sound he couldn't ignore, a whisper.
Ethan.
The voice was soft, distant at first, but unmistakably human. It sounded familiar, too familiar. Ethan's blood ran cold as he froze in place. His name echoed once more, but this time it was different, closer, almost as if it was right behind him.
Ethan.
He spun around, his flashlight trembling in his hand, but there was no one there. Nothing but the trees and the endless blackness beyond them. The voice repeated his name, a breathy whisper brushing against his ear. The air grew suddenly cold, the hairs on the back of his neck standing at attention. Panic surged through him. He took a few hesitant steps backward, his heart hammering in his chest. His grip tightened around the flashlight as he scanned the area, hoping for any sign of another living being. A person, an animal, anything. But there was nothing. Then, as if summoned by his fear, he saw it. A movement out of the corner of his eye. His own reflection. For a split second, he thought he was looking at someone else. Standing just a few feet away, illuminated in the beam of his flashlight. The figure was perfect, a mirror image of him. But as Ethan's mind raced to catch up, he realized with horror that it wasn't another person at all. It was him. his own reflection standing still as if waiting for something. Waiting for him. The voice, now a cold whisper in his ear, echoed once more.
I'm waiting to take your place.
Ethan's breath caught in his throat, his blood turning to ice. His body trembled uncontrollably, and he staggered backward. He tried to speak, to shout, but his voice was swallowed by the thickening darkness. He spun around, heart racing, looking for an escape, but the trees seemed to close in, their branches twisting into grotesque shapes like skeletal hands reaching for him. The reflection in the dark didn't move. It stood perfectly still, just a few feet away, staring back at him with hollow, unblinking eyes. A twisted smile curled across the face of his reflection, a smile that didn't belong to him. With a choked cry, Ethan ran. His legs felt heavy, as though the forest itself was pulling him back. The trees seemed to bend inwards, their branches reaching down as if to grab him. He stumbled over the roots and underbrush, his flashlight bouncing erratically, casting fleeting shadows across the ground. But no matter how fast he ran, the darkness closed in on him. The voice echoed again, louder now, as if it were all around him.
I'm waiting.
Ethan's heart pounded in his chest. His mind screamed for him to escape, but it was too late. The darkness swallowed him whole. The last thing he saw before his eyes shut forever was the reflection, still standing in the clearing, waiting. The world went black.
How terrifying was that story? How many jump scares did you catch? Let us know your thoughts and what makes a horror story truly spine-chilling.